The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
And welcome, wrestling fans, to the Ice Hour. This podcast is aimed at promoting the world of Division III college wrestling and is named for the late Hall of Fame coach Dave Eisenhower. Here we'll talk about topics and news that's relevant to those who compete for the love of the sport in Division III. The Ice Hour is sponsored by My House Sports Gear. Check out their line of wrestling gear and apparel at myhousesportsgear.com. Subscribe using your favorite podcasting app by going to matttalkonline.com/ice. Episode 16 of the Ice Hour, a D3 wrestling podcast brought to you by My House Sports Gear. Today, heading east, as we've been kind of living in the Midwest here recently. We're going back east to York, Pennsylvania, and visiting with Division III Hall of Famer and the head coach of the York College Spartans, Duane Bastress. Coach Bastress, welcome to the Ice Hour.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
So when I got to tell a little story, and you don't know this, we haven't prepped or anything like this, but when I first got really experienced and involved in Division III wrestling is when I moved to Pennsylvania, working for the NWCA with Intermat in 2005. And with all the great Division III programs in that area, you know, I went down to E-Town and over to Gettysburg and down to York, and it really exposed me to Division III wrestling. But there was a moment when I realized, one, Duane Bastress was a bad dude, and two, this guy was one of the best wrestlers in the country. And let me set the stage for you. I think it was 2006, Rec Hall at Penn State. Yep. And you were on a team at York, coached then by Tom Kessler, that beat Division I Clarion in a dual meet. And that's it. Clarion was like all bent out of shape. This is a sad day in Clarion wrestling. And it was like a signature win for York College. I remember you got a fall in that duel. And I was like, did I just see a Division III team beat a Division I team? I mean, that was like my first introduction to who Duane Bastress was.
Oh, yeah, that's not a bad first impression to make on you.
Yeah.
Nah, I still remember that to this day. So, I mean, that was obviously a great win at the time, but even probably more importantly for the program overall, it was definitely something that we still, buddies of mine, still talk about to this day.
Yeah, and for those who are unfamiliar, it's like, how the heck would that happen? Well, that was a short-lived event called the PA State Duels, and Penn State hosted it in the Troy Sunderland era. Lehigh came over, Pitt Johnstown came up, Clarion, I think Williamson Trade, I think, was even in there. I mean, it was like Division I, Division II, Division III, and you know, UPJ would always hang tough with the D1s, but ultimately just didn't have the depth. But then here comes York College. I mean, I don't even think you guys were ranked super high in Division III that year. I mean, I think you were ranked, but it was like, whoa, I think it was like 18-17 or something like that. It was just like, did that just happen?
Yeah, I mean, that was early in my senior year, so we kind of were flying under the radar at that time. But, I mean, the ball got rolling, and all of a sudden, before you know it, here we are. We just beat a Division I team. Now, the next match, we kind of ran into a buzzsaw called Penn State. But for that moment, it was sweet to beat a Division I team.
Yeah. So as we circle back and talk about your role now as the head coach, entering your fourth year, and Corey King, one of your assistants, basically, he reached out over the summer and said, the joke around the office is now you're entering your first year as the head coach there, because there was there's incidents we'll talk about as we go through year 1 through year 4. But, you know, getting settled, a full-time position, what do you expect from your program this year and all the stuff that you guys have had to go through for the last couple of years?
I mean, our goals have always kind of been the same, even when I was a part-time to begin my coaching career. But we want to bring home some All-Americans, hopefully a couple national champs, get some signature dual meet wins. But, I mean, that's really our goal for all of our guys, especially the top 10 guys that we have at each weight, just telling them, hey, let's go out, bring home some hardware come March for the national tournament.
You know, coming from an alumni standpoint and then getting that position as a head coach when, you know, it starts out part-time, then full-time, what was the level of pride that you have for York College and being able to sit there and coach your alma mater?
I mean, York holds a special place in my heart. They kind of gave me a second chance when I left the Division I level. I mean, it was a perfect fit. And then take over for Coach Kessler, who is a legend here at the school and in Division III, was it's an honor. I mean, it's something I take a lot of pride in. Hopefully, taking our program to the next level that he kind of built upon.
One thing Coach Kessler's teams that I always had was just monstrous rosters. I mean, what was it like wrestling in that era where you're like, geez, you're meeting guys, running into guys. Wait, you're on the team? What? How many guys have we got on this team anyhow?
I mean, it was good. It added a lot of, obviously, depth, a lot of competition. So, I mean, it was good. I mean, but at the same time, it sometimes got a little hectic when you have 50-some guys in a room or 40 to 50 guys in a room trying to wrestle all at the same time or taking breaks here and there. So it had a good and bad.
When you left Bloom and came to York, what were your expectations and what did you know about Division III, as a competitor, and what ultimately said, all right, I can be successful here?
Well, the funny story is when I left Bloom, my coach or my cousin wrestled here at York. I came and watched him wrestle when I was growing up. So when I left Bloom and he was, hey, why don't you come check out York? And the first time that I really met Coach Kessler was he took me over to his house. We're sitting there talking, and he has the Cowboys game on. Now, he's a huge Cowboys fan. I'm a huge Steelers fan. And I told Coach, like, this will probably be the only thing we ever disagree on, who's better. But once I met Coach Kessler, everything clicked here. It felt like a family. I felt at home. I felt very comfortable here. So, like I said, and then once probably getting into meeting some of the guys, kind of still to this day, I call most of them my brothers. It just, like I said, everything kind of clicked. It fell into the place at the right time for me.
Having that familiarity with the school because of your family member that wrestled here, but at what point did you realize that when you're starting to compete Division III level and you're like, wait a minute, that whole, like, I was a Division I kid, I should be kind of wrecking these guys. Was that in your head, or did you find out real quickly that, whoa, these guys don't care who I am. They're tough here.
I kind of came in with expectations that, hey, Division III's tough. I mean, obviously as a wrestler, you check, and I always looked at who was wrestling at certain places. I still say to this day, my sophomore year when I first started wrestling in New York, we were up at North-South Duels, and I lost to a kid from Johnson and Wales. I'll say that's probably my best loss I ever had, because when I came off the mat, it allowed my teammates to see, like, okay, he's like one of us. He's beatable. He's not this invincible kind of Division I kid. And from there, the monkey was kind of off my back and off the guy's back. And they kind of realized, like, okay, he's one of us. He can compete at this level. But it also, for me, kind of woke me up a little bit. Like, okay, it's not going to be as easy as what a lot of some Division I guys think when they come to the Division III level.
That Johnson and Wales kid, by chance, wasn't named Lenhart, was it? Because they had like 15 of them.
I feel like he was. I know it was a scrap. It was, but like I said, when I lost, it was kind of like take a deep breath. I mean, obviously you're upset that you lose a match, but it was also one of them like, hey, the monkey's off my back now. I can relax and just go out and start wrestling.
What clicked for you your junior year?
I think it started sophomore year at Nationals, watching guys that I know I could beat, getting on the podium and realizing, like, hey, when I come back here, I never want to be without being on top of that podium. And then spending time in the summer training and working hard and working with coaches to refine some of my stuff on top and in neutral. And I think really once we I bumped up in weight, I went up from 74 to 84, so I wasn't cutting as much weight. I was able to kind of enjoy wrestling a little bit more. And I would say probably during that preseason, something just kind of clicked that I was like, I feel like I can do this. Even though at the time, like, I wasn't ranked or anything, but Coach and I felt like, hey, we can do something special this year.
Coaches usually use the term jump levels, and we're seeing it used a lot in the media now to see when a kid, especially at the high school level or earlier in his college career, goes from being, marginally and middling in there to an All-American contender to a national championship contender. What was the biggest thing that helped you jump a level in that junior year to be like, okay, I'm not just ready to be an All-American. I'm ready to just pound people and be a national champion?
I think the mental preparation, that was the big thing for me. I mean, I tell our guys now, but like when I would go out for runs, I would play a match in my head from the time I shook the opponent's hand to every situation or everything I would go through. So in that 3.5 mile run, I went through a whole match, and by the time I wrestled a match, I've already kind of did it once, so to speak, in my head. So I felt like I was a couple of moves ahead. And you always hear how athletes say like everything slows down. For me, that's how it felt. Like, okay, everything's nice and slow. I can think like I'm a couple of moves ahead of these guys. So I would definitely say the mental preparation, Coach Kessler helped with that, but an assistant coach, Coach Lency, was big on the mental preparation for me my junior and senior year.
So you finish your career as a two-time national champ. In that senior year, you're the returning national champ, and you're wrestling one of 6 Wartburg guys who made the finals that year. They won pretty comfortably. Akeem Carter, you win in overtime. The experience, having gone to Division III championships every year since 2009, I see what the crowd is like when a Wartburg guy loses, or an Augsburg guy for that matter. Now, what's the pressure like for you in that situation? You're against the Buzzsaw program. There, it's something that, this is one of the 2 teams to beat. Yeah, but you're the return. You should be the favorite here. Yet, you've got everybody that's not a Berg rooting for you. What's that like to win in that type of environment?
My senior year, I was kind of blessed because we wrestled at a college in New Jersey, so I had a lot of family and friends that didn't get a chance to see me wrestle, be there. The crowd was amazing. It's something special when you're wrestling a Wartburg and Augsburg kid, because not only do you have your fans rooting, but all of a sudden you have the Luthers, the Augsburgs or the Wartburgs, depending on who you're wrestling. The Wisconsin lacrosse is going nuts for you. So all of a sudden you go from, let's say, a couple hundred fans to maybe 1,000 or so fans that are going. So that definitely fires you up. And especially for my senior year, me and Akeem wrestled earlier in the year, had a really close match. I know he was going for title number 3, and I was going for my second title. So I was definitely more focused and ready to rock and roll. It didn't matter if you had a Wartburg singlet on or what, but yeah, the fans that year were awesome.
Do matches like that really make you appreciate the sport more, knowing that, it's the credentials you guys had hitting each other? If this was the same guys in a Division I thing, people would be talking about it as one of the greatest things of all time, kind of like we saw with Snyder and Gwizdowski last year at heavyweight Division I. We got the world champ versus the guy going for 3. In a Division III, that kind of was under the radar. The Division III fans knew about it, but, situations like that, and you appreciate wrestling. How much of that moment do you still think about and be like, man, that was just a really, really cool moment?
Every year what I'm trying to talk to our guys about, hey, this is our dream and our goals here for you to achieve what I got to achieve. So I think about it. I know last year when Akeem got inducted into the Hall of Fame, I definitely brought up some memories of that day and that match and that night, and just the level of competition that, you're wrestling, like you said, Division III national finals, but that level of talent is there. It's definitely good memories to have. My dad still talks about it to this day, so he gets all fired up about it.
When your career ends, you go into the world of mixed martial arts. You end up fighting for Bellator for a while. And what was the decision to go into MMA? Was that something you'd always kind of had an interest in, or was that something like it was just right for the moment?
I actually was asked to help train a guy, local pro fighter. Started helping him out, and then they said, "Hey, how do you feel about fighting a couple amateur fights?" I did that. Then I got told I couldn't fight any more amateur fights by the PA Athletic Commission. So I said, well, let's try turning pro and see what happens. It never was something that I was like, hey, I definitely want to do that as soon as I graduate. It just kind of was the right time, right place, right time kind of moment.
Yeah, and then the time comes, Coach Kessler steps down, and there's the opening, and there's a significant stoppage in your MMA career. It's like, okay, August 2013 is your last fight. September 13, you're the new coach. So was that a discussion you had with the administration? Be like, hey, if you're going to be the coach, no fighting, or was that something that you were just kind of past that moment at that point?
Kind of something past that moment. My administration was, hey, they were supportive if I decided to keep doing it, but it was kind of a decision I had to make. Do I want to pursue my MMA career or do I want to give 100% to this coaching career and see where we can kind of take this program? I mean, the dream's always been to be a college coach, a head college coach somewhere. So, I mean, at the alma mater, it kind of held a little higher regard. So at that time, it was, hey, it's time to kind of put the MMA fighting career on the back burner and focus on coaching.
Now, how soon into your first year does it hit the fan with, the hazing allegations and things like that really painted the school in a bad light? But, here it is, you're the head coach, like, what the heck's going on here, man? I mean, how did you deal with that situation? What was the timeline like back then?
I mean, I'm trying to think. I got named head coach. I would say that happened in October 12th. I'm sitting at the time, I'm a part-time coach, so I'm sitting at my other job, and I get an anonymous email. And I had to read it a couple of times because I couldn't believe what I was reading. And then kind of the snowball effect. I mean, reported it to my athletic director. Hey, here's what I just got. Had a bunch of meetings with the guys to try to figure out what would happen. And then, like you said, everything hit the fan in a hurry for the next probably month or so. And we just kind of had to keep our head above water, kind of to make sure we could stay and hopefully keep our season the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing situations like, recently with the Columbia group texting thing, or the where they shut the program down to investigate, and then Harvard's men's soccer team for these are varying degrees of severity, but they shut down their season. So in that era, you don't know what's going to happen. But how did it? What was the response like from your administrators? They were like, okay, hey, Duane, we know this isn't you here, but we've got to do something. I mean, shutting down a program, that's really not good for exposure.
No, and I mean, I'm blessed to have a great administration. Dr. GS and Paul, our athletic director, my boss, have nothing but supportive since I took over. So there was a lot of conversations, like, hey, we got to investigate, kind of get down to the bottom of everything. With that being said, we had to miss our first two competitions of the year, kind of pull out of them to kind of make sure, hey, is this the right thing to do? And there was discussions. Do we shut it down for the year? Do we shut it down for a semester? Ultimately, we came up with shut it down for two competitions, get to the bottom of everything. And then from there, some individuals were suspended for a little bit longer or shorter, depending on the severity of what they were involved in. But all along, the administration and myself and my coaching staff were on the same page. So that was definitely a lot easier to kind of go through than if they were just making decisions.
Yeah, situations in controversy like this isn't really in the head coaching playbook. There is no real pattern of, okay, here's what we do. I mean, what did you learn from that experience and that you were able to move forward and move past to be like, all right, that's behind us. Let's get ready for year two.
Well, you're right. There is no playbook or no like, hey, when you take over as head coach, this could happen. Here's what you do. I mean, I tried to reach out to a couple of mentors. At the same time, I mean, your head's spinning trying to figure it out. So I think after that happened, it definitely we were in a cultural change at the time as well. So trying to establish the culture I wanted. So we got rid of obviously a couple of kids, not the way that we really would have liked, but it happened. So year two starts. We're kind of still trying to establish like, hey, this is like Corey always says, this is your second year of college coaching. So, I mean, it was obviously a little difficult. You had some guys that were coming back that were a little still hesitant from the thing. I would say we had a couple incoming freshmen that obviously everybody knew about it. So when you're recruiting them, got to let the parents know, like, hey, it's an isolated incident. It'll never happen again here. Everybody's learned from it. Like, I can promise, like, we'll take care of your son for the next 4 or 5 years. So I think transition to year two was a little bit smoother heading into that one.
Yeah, but how do you try to repair an image when recruiting? Because even in Division III, recruiting it's cutthroat. Coaches, some are going to be above it and not use it to their advantage, and others are going to use it to their advantage. And how do you combat that? You kind of explained on you got to take care of your recruit for 4 to 5 years, but when it comes time to approach some of those coaches, I mean, how do you say, hey, knock that crap off?
I mean, there was obviously when you're recruiting, like you said, there's some coaches that'll use it as negative recruiting. When you're talking to a kid like that, I've never really confronted a coach about it. I feel like, hey, if his ethics want him allow to kind of use it, hey, go more power to him. But I know the program, I know the tradition, I know myself, and I know my coaching staff that we're gonna overcome this. So I think a lot of it was when I was recruiting kids, trying to meet them face to face, let them meet me, see what I'm about, what our coaching staff's about, what our guys are about. I really think helped that. And then the guys that we had returning were great, and making sure our image, we started to really repair our image locally, but nationally with certain things we were doing, community service, reaching out to people and stuff like that.
So then the situation comes around like, okay, you're no longer going to be a part-time guy. The school
Mm-hmm.
goes, this is a full-time position. How much of a game changer was that for you, not just professionally, but personally?
It was huge. At the time, I was working at an alternative ed school, and I get the call, I should say, or the text from my boss, Paul, and says, hey, can you stop in my office later today when you get to school? So, of course, everybody gets a little nervous when they hear that from their boss. But he came in and said, hey, look, we want to go and make this a full-time position right away. So the beginning of February, everything probably within a week or so, it was leaving my full-time job to transition into a full-time coach. Now kind of adapting to, hey, what's it like to be on campus all day, every day to help these guys. It definitely happened kind of like a whirlwind, but it was definitely the best thing for the program.
So setting into year 3 now, like you said, like Corey said, it's year 3 was year 1. You've got a whole new set of circumstances presenting yourself. Now you're on campus the whole time. I believe Coach Kessler was a professor on campus, correct?
He actually teaches at a local high school.
Okay, so I knew he was pretty close. I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
But so now you're there full time, and you've got great facilities. I marvel at how well a school like that in Division III has just great facilities. I know there's been some construction done probably within the last 10 years since I last saw it. But now you've got something different. You walk into a situation, you've got 2 years under your belt. You're like, okay, full-time coach at my alma mater. What changes? What changes in terms of, the mentality, how much time you can spend? How much did that decision kind of escalate your timeline for success at the program?
I think in all reality, probably moved it up a little bit. Like I said, I was here to be I'm full time now. So I can, if one of my guys wants to work out at 9 a.m., I'm there with him. Instead of saying, hey, wait till 3:30 when I get to school. Probably the most important thing is the relationships that I was able to build with my guys. Just being on campus, hey, they can stop in my office any time of the day. We can talk either wrestling or life or whatever it might be. I would say that was probably the most significant impact, becoming closer with a lot of them. But obviously, when you're a full-time coach, you can devote more time to recruiting, making sure you're reaching out to the level of kids that you want to get to, more time with the practice planning and making sure everything in the program's taken care of instead of trying to do it at night like I used to when I was part-time.
When recruiting now as a full-time coach, and you've got that ability, like you said, to be there at 9 a.m. if a guy needs to work out, how much does that change your recruiting process when you got D3 coaches that are still part-time, and sometimes you're using the fact that you're a full-time coach? That is a recruiting advantage.
Mm-hmm.
How important is that to the kids that you've seen and recruited here in this last cycle?
I think it's huge. I think that's something that parents probably more so than the kids think about. I've had a lot of parents ask me, so you're full-time? Yep, I'm usually the first coach here, the last one to leave every night. So I think they like that. Hey, coach is here all day, every day for my son. It's kind of like a support thing. I feel like a comfort thing. Like I said, are the guys that we have that I've recruited now. The seniors now will be my first recruiting class. Have blossomed under that relationship building, knowing, hey, I kind of have an open door policy. They can come in, stop in any time to talk. So it's definitely helped. with getting more kids on campus as well during visits instead of always wait until 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Now I can do a visit at 9 a.m. if a kid works for their schedule and that. So it definitely helps in that process as well.
When it comes to goals of the program, the administrators at Wartburg and Augsburg, for example, they expect national championships or contend for a national championship each year. The programs that are on the rise are looking for trophies and maybe be in that discussion to say, hey, if things fall right and we get enough guys through, we can contend for a national title. What is the administration at York College's goals for these programs and benchmarks they set for you to be like, is it number of All-Americans? Is it qualifiers? I mean, how do they see the success level of this program being important to its, obviously they're hiring you full time, so there's an investment in the program. But how much emphasis there is let's win some stuff here?
I think, obviously there's an emphasis because it's college athletics, so winning is the key. They obviously want us to bring home some All-Americans, hopefully a couple of national championships, definitely a team trophy in the next few years. I think probably more importantly I speak for our institution, but just building good overall athletes, but more importantly, guys of character, integrity. We want them to be good citizens when they leave here. So I think they probably put more of an emphasis on that. Obviously, they want us to win matches and get the accolades, but they want us to have 30 to 40 solid individuals that can go out and make a difference in the real world when they graduate.
Now, you say 30 to 40. A lot of the draws with Division III programs adding wrestling is the amount of male students they can bring on campus in an era where female attendance is growing, and you need an effort to get wrestling on campus. Now, York's never had a problem with numbers, but how do you manage such numbers? How did Coach Kessler manage numbers? What have you leaned on him in terms of getting advice from him on how to manage such big numbers?
Like I said, he was kind of the guy to follow in his footsteps with managing numbers. I think you just have to know your athletes, know, hey, who do I have to give a little more attention to? Who can I let go a little bit? It's nice now that I'm full time that I can give more attention to guys. I have 3 great assistants that are here pretty much every day of the week to help, and they'll take on certain responsibilities to help me as well. But right now we try to keep our roster right around 40 guys. That's manageable for practice. You always got those injuries and stuff like that. But that way you can give equal time to pretty much everybody when you keep it around that level, I should say, that numbers.
Is it a struggle to recruit in Pennsylvania? There's so many Division I's, Division II's, Division III's. It's a large collection of college opportunities, and you've got a room of 40 guys. That seems to be that there's a demand to wrestle at the next level. What have you done to tap into that, to say, even if it's a phone call, say, yeah, I'm interested in you coming to New York. What makes it work to get kids from Pennsylvania to stay home and give Division III an option?
I think the big thing is just let them know, hey, the level of competition. When we talk about being an All-American and national champs, when you get out to the national tournament, you're wrestling those Division I, your top Division II caliber kids. So if you want to go and wrestle that level of competition, I have no problem going and wrestling anybody anytime. But we're going to seek out that level. So I think guys like that, I think guys also for Division III, there's not as much pressure on them as there is at the Division I level. So some guys like that, they like this. We're a small college, so they like the small class size as well. I think that's kind of our big things. Like, hey, look, you're going to wrestle that level of competition, but you're not going to have the pressure of what it's like to compete at the Division I level. It's not going to be kind of like a full-time 50 to 60-hour job like it might be at the Division I level. Here at York, we want you to love the sport and enjoy it over your 4 or 5 years, depending on how long you're here for.
When it comes to competition, we'll get to the realignment discussion here later, but you're in a spot where you don't really have to travel very far to get good quality competition, whether it be down into Maryland, or now Virginia's got a lot more Division III schools within the state of Pennsylvania, over to Jersey and Ohio. You don't have to make long trips to get a diverse group of competitors. And with the way the realignment is, you can actually go probably 10 miles in either direction, and you've got teams from 3 different regions. So scheduling, I mean, that's something that can't be super difficult with the plethora of teams. Yes, I use the word plethora of teams in the vicinity there of York College.
No, I mean, like you said, I mean, there's tons of schools around that we can go out and wrestle. So that's what's nice. I mean, we're at the luxury that we can pick the tougher teams if we want. But I mean, we've gone down the whole way down to Southern Virginia last year to wrestle. We've gone out to Ohio, New Jersey. We went up to Roger Williams this year to wrestle. So, I mean, we're going out and seeking those top level teams and programs to challenge ourselves and ultimately get our guys ready. So it's kind of a benefit kind of where we're at, where our college is located, with who we can kind of pick and choose to wrestle year in and year out.
So in developing the rivalries, when there's an event you circle on the schedule and your kids get amped up for, I mean, when it comes to wrestling, who does York get up for in dual meets?
I will say TC&J's was a rival of ours when I wrestled here. So I say all the older alumni, I usually get text messages when we wrestle them and we beat them. I also get text messages if we wrestle them and lose to them. But I would say probably in the recent years, Messiah is the new big time rival that come February 3rd when we travel up there to their home gym. Our guys will definitely be amped up and ready to go. So Messiah is probably our number one rival right now in the most recent years.
And what's their success done for the teams around them and trying to say, all right, well, these guys are seeing success. There's no reason we got to keep up with them. I mean, we were beating them a couple of years ago. Now they're past us. We got to hang tight. We got to contend here.
I mean, I think it's great. I mean, it's like you said, it's a measuring stick for our program and our guys to kind of see like, okay, we talk about beating them and competing with them. Well, now we know kind of where they're at and what do we have to do to get there. So I think it makes us work harder in our individuals. It makes us make sure we're recruiting the right caliber of kids to obviously compete and hopefully beat them, but also compete with some of the top level teams in Division III. So I think if anything, their success in recent years has helped probably not only our area, but the East Coast in wrestling, kind of to say, hey, look, this East Coast team can compete with the big boys at the Division III level.
Got to ask, when you hear East Coast timeout, does it drive you nuts?
It does sometimes, but at the same time, I find it funny whenever I hear the Midwest timeout from some teams. But yeah, that cracks me up. Hey, it's all in good fun. It gets the fans fired up, gets the guys fired up, so it's fun. Makes a good atmosphere.
Yeah, when they were out in Hershey a couple years ago, I didn't hear a whole lot. I did hear one section of Luther fans try to start it, and they looked around there. They realized they were crammed in between TC&J, Del Val, and Centenary. They're like, East Coast.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, that's the one thing I love about the Division III tournament, and that's something that. How do you explain? And I'd love every coach in Division III to explain what that Division III finals is like, what that tournament's like with the Luther fans, with their chant, and the Whitewater fan. I mean, there are just factions of fans. Wabash brought their team out east to Hershey with great crowds. I mean, we've seen it from Del Val. Messiah's got a huge crowd now. I mean, the experience of the Division III tournament is unlike any other I've ever seen. I've been, obviously I've seen all these big tournaments, but the Division III is so unique. What is your selling point to these athletes to explain what the Division III championships is like?
I mean, it's hard I try to explain to our guys, especially the guys that make to the national tournament, like, hey, be ready for, I know we might have like the last year, I think we may had 15 fans. I said, but when you wrestle a Luther, if you wrestle a Wartburg and Augsburg, you're going to gain a couple of hundred fans in about 30 seconds once that whistle blows. And every year that it happens, or our guys get to watch somebody else wrestle like an Augsburg or Wartburg, and then everybody else is cheering for them. They're like, that's an awesome experience to see the other teams cheering. But at the same time, as soon as you wrestle their guy, they're all rooting against you. But I mean, it's something that you try to explain to athletes. But I think it's more if they get to experience, hey, that cheering, that just that atmosphere, it makes them want to get back. It makes their teammates want to get there to experience when they come home in March. And, hey, this is what it was like out there at the national tournament. You guys would love it. The crowds are awesome. The fans. I mean, it's a good atmosphere to be a part of and to be around.
I understand the announcer's pretty good too, but but I digress as we move forward here.
Yeah, he's not too bad.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I did everything I could. We made about 40 minutes without me talking about me. Go figure. But as we wrap up this episode, just give us some final goals this year. What you're expecting from your team. I mean, guys that we can hope to see in lacrosse. And you've got a pretty good dual meet record. You're just finished up a tournament not that long ago. I mean, what's on the goal for the docket this year? What are the goals on the docket? Yeah, let's try that again for York College this season.
I mean, obviously our goals academically, we want to try to get at least 10 academic All-Americans. Team wants to have over a 3.3 GPA, team GPA at the end of the year. Wrestling wise, goals are simple. Hopefully bring home some national champs, All-Americans. And I mean, with Ryan Flynn at 33, who's now ranked second, Greg Warner, who was an returning All-American for us. Those two are obviously the headliners of the program. But we have a lot of young guys that are just on the cusp of getting to that level. And that's hopefully when we head into the second semester, they'll turn it up and kind of be able to see that. And obviously, I mean, dual meets, it's February 3rd. It obviously is a big date for us as a team, dual meet, but compete for a regional crown is kind of the big things.
Greg Warner, I think I ran into him in the elevator last year in Cedar Rapids. But anyway, that's a different story entirely. But all right, Coach Bastress, and the last thing I want to ask, what's the best thing about being a Division III athlete and the best thing about being a Division III wrestling coach?
Best thing about being a Division III athlete is just wrestling. I mean, competing in a sport that you love. I think the small, kind of the school setting, the atmosphere of the national tournament, but the fans and camaraderie of all Division III coaches and wrestling community. Being a head coach, getting to share the same experiences as that I went through with my athletes, and hopefully they beat a bunch of our records and my records that I've set here. I would say, but that's probably my two biggest things.
All right, Coach, we look forward to seeing you down the line. You want to follow them this year, go to ycpspartans.com. Good schedule right there, and we'll see you in lacrosse.
All right, sounds good.
Show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.